Let's see, I'm gonna actually, well, I'll move over once we get started. Yeah, it does. You have to understand why.
Real high. Let's get you. You can do things on the fun you have people. You look at me, I said, you want all people mind you what to do. And they look at me.
Mm-mm. Hi, Jennifer. Yeah.
They have.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're looking sparse tonight. I don't know. Education at home is kind of a scary topic, you know, but we're going to talk about it anyway, and we're streaming, and lots more people will watch it. Although we really want people to show up. We really, really, really want people to show up because we want to create community, not just sitting off in our own little places. We really need to create community. So that's a big part of what we are trying to do. I am Tina Horlocker, and I'm the chair of the Davis County Conservatives. And tonight we are going to be discussing education at home. And we have a panel, and I think everybody is here, except for one that's still going to be coming from work. But let's start with a prayer. Brian Oswald.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to be here for this community forum tonight to discuss the importance of education and specifically educating our kids at home. We pray that as we are involved with this panel discussion, that our minds may be illuminated of how we can best help our kids in their own education and address issues related to it in our own lives. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have just a couple of quick announcements. The first is there is an event on Monday on the steps of the Capitol, and it is, what is it? I don't know what it's called. Let me look it up real quick. It's going to be good, and it's going to be patriotic, and it is Why I Love America. And so it's August 17th on the State of the Capitol, 5:30 to 7:30. There's going to be food trucks and live music, and there's going to be, they want families to have blankets on the lawn, and the Capitol Museum will be open. They're going to have a huge flag that they need people to come and hold the flag. They want to get it. It's like the biggest flag there is. They want people to come so they can help hold the flag and get a big picture with it that's going to be put into the museum. There's going to be reenactments of Declaration of Independence. and some other Freedom Festival speech contest winners who will also be giving their speeches. So it's going to be a fun 2 hours, a great thing to take your families to, patriotic. I wanted to tell you our next event is going to be on MIDA. That is, I'm not going to be able to remember that acronym without Jen here. Military Industrial something. It is an entity that was made up of the legislature and is behind the data centers. And we want people to know what they're about because it's going to not make you very happy. But it's something we all need to know because we need to do something about it. And speaking of the data center that was supposed to be going into Box Elder County is most likely not going to be going in anymore, you know? So that tells you the power of the people when they wake up and they do something. So, Irene? Military, what? Installation Development Authority. Okay. So we're going to learn all about that next week.
What time is that?
Which? 5:30 to 7:30. And I said there will be food trucks. All right. So that's next. That'll be on the, what's the fourth Thursday? The day is, I think, like the what? 27th. Thank you. And then the next one after that is going to be on education again. And the one after that is going to be MIDA Part 2. But we have some really good events that are coming up, very informational. And as you can see, we need your help getting people here. A couple of other things, just in case anybody is interested, we have a group honey order. If anybody is interested in raw, unfiltered, uncooked honey. It's really good honey. Here's a flyer if anyone is interested. And you can ask me questions after. All right, we are ready to get started. So all of my panelists, if you will please come up. We've got Jennifer Brooks, who is an educational expert. And you can just take your seats up here. And Peter Cannon and Olivia Williams and Courtney Huffman, I recognize there are not quite enough seats. And so what we're going to do is if Maddie doesn't mind sitting on the stairs, and when William comes, he will sit by you. William is at work. All right. So I think I'm going to kick this night off. I'm going to actually move now. I'm going to be asking the questions, so I think I'm going to put the mic maybe here. You, but them. Okay, so I think tonight, yes. Okay. Yeah.
No one ever shut up the panelists to move on to another topic or let someone from the audience ask questions.
You want the audience to ask questions?
I don't care if the audience asks questions. I just want to listen to the same person talk for 9 minutes.
Okay.
Move along and get everybody's opinion.
Yeah, we're going to ask questions, but we are also going to give each person an opportunity to speak for maybe 5 minutes about homeschooling, whatever. Anyway, so let me get my train of thought back. So for myself, I'm a mom of 10 children. I homeschooled all of my children, and we did many different things during that whole time. We were involved with many different things. I'm not necessarily going to talk about that because I have my daughter up here. I will soon have a son up here, and we're going to play another video of another one of my children to kind of give his perspective on their experience. But I'm just going to kind of moderate and ask questions. Once I kind of get through, if anybody actually has a question, just come up and sit right here, and then I will let you ask your question, all right? So let's go ahead, though, and get started. You all have a mic. And Peter, let's start with you. And I would just like for you to just answer the question, what has your experience been in home education? So everybody's experience should be a little bit different. So I just want your perspective and how much, 3, 5 minutes, everybody's mic should be on. You want to test your mics?
My mic is on.
Okay, perfect. If you push the little button on the bottom. Okay, so Peter, you go ahead.
My experience with home education is that I have a daughter who has homeschooled all 8 of her children, lives out in Riverton, and I've been very close with their education. They've done a variety of kinds of teaching, but it's well organized, and now several of them have reached adulthood and have become very successful in what they've done. So homeschooling can be successful, I guess. The other thing is, I've taught for the last 7 or so years at a private school in Bountiful called Liberty Hills Academy. Interestingly, the textbook that I taught from in several of the classes I taught was a homeschool textbook. It made it easy for me to understand the subject matter. I could just read the book and teach right out of it. It all was explained. The children could read it on their own and teach themselves if we wanted them to do that. So my experience with homeschool textbooks is that they're very thorough, very educational. They're not a second level down. They're plenty high level, and yet they're made for a parent without that specialty in college to be able to teach that subject. And so it's been very effective, I think, and I think my students would agree that was a very good textbook for them. The beauty of it was those textbooks are allowed to speak about religion, not limited to the kind of textbooks you might have in a public school. And so if you want to teach about religion in your homeschooling experience, homeschool textbooks give you background material to be able to do that. And so I love that. I love the whole chapter in my biology book that we taught from that talks about why evolution cannot be scientifically valid. And they gave us the scientific reasons. You'll never get that in a textbook from a public school, ever. But there it is in a homeschool textbook, quite advantageous, I believe. Okay, Tina, you need any more than that?
Nope, that's great.
So my experience is that I am the oldest of Tina's children, and I've had the privilege of never having gone to public school and only being homeschooled. And I call it a privilege personally. I did attend in high school doing some choir and theater, things that require a community. And before high school, I did some community theater and there were some homeschool groups that tried to do choir and different things, and those were effective. But they're only as effective as the parents who want to cooperate, you want to do something like that. So if you have children at any point who are interested in doing some kind of a community choir or theater, you need to get enough parents who are willing to invest energy together to make that happen. If the parents and the children are not motivated enough to make it happen, then that is a little less effective. So that's one of the maybe difficulties of homeschooling. But I loved every part of my experience. I learned a lot on my own and then got to help teach my younger siblings in different capacities. I never was teaching them, but helped, as a mentor or guide because I was older and had gone through it, and that helped things stick with me more. I remembered more because I was reviewing the beginner stuff as I was helping or watching my mom teach younger siblings. So that was very helpful. And now I'm a mom of 3 and I've started homeschooling them, and they're still little, but we are already very much in the trenches of everything. And the tools and the tricks that I've learned through my entire life being educated at home and having many other homeschool parents who are mentors, advisors, and friends of mine, they are now people that I turn to constantly to make sure that I have the best advice and help and guidance. And I'm working with other parents to try and create a co-op of our own. So there are definitely other moms and people in our community and across the state who have told me they want to help. They want to homeschool, but they're not sure where to start. And I've told them that I'm happy to help and guide that as well. The last thing that I'll say quickly about homeschooling, in my experience, is just that you need to make sure that kids are motivated as a parent, but you still have to guide them in some capacity. Growing up, I did not like math, and I really, really struggled with it. And there was a period of time where I didn't do math because it was just such a struggle. And my mom decided, okay, we'll take a year off. And I can't remember the reason for that, but I took a year off of math, and it was definitely a struggle getting back into it. So whatever you end up doing when you have those struggles, make sure that you're counseling together and there's something that you can kind of help motivate and whatever else. But I picked it up again, so I don't know. That's a little bit of my experience.
Okay, I'm just going to speak to that just for a minute so I don't look bad. I had gone to a homeschooling conference and I had listened to someone speak about math and a few other subjects, and this person who professed to be an expert said, when your child's ready to learn it, they'll learn it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I had decided, okay, we're just not going to do math. And so, and the other thing he said is that when they want to learn it, they'll tell you. And so that next year, I'm like, okay, we're not doing math. And then the next year started, and no one was saying anything about math. And I was kind of starting to sweat a little bit. And about halfway into that year, I'm like, forget it, we're doing math. And so we started to do math, but a number of years later, so Olivia, I don't remember how old you were at that time, maybe 12-ish. And so it wasn't just her, it was everybody. And my son, years later, got after me. He's like, Mom, you should have not done that. That put me behind. He definitely caught up. But I just say that because when you are homeschooling, when you choose to educate your children at home, it's serious business, right? You've got to commit to doing what needs to be done. And I don't want to say that to make you feel overwhelmed, because there's a lot of people who feel like, oh, whatever happens will happen. That's not the kind of home education we really like.
Well, one more thing with that. So the other part of that was, in my experience, we had a co-op. So there were other parents who had more expertise in maybe biology or something. So we would go to another home and dissect frogs. My mom didn't necessarily know how to do that, and so there was like 5 families. We all got together and we dissected frogs, and we learned, you know, different things that were outside of the expertise that my mom had, and she then outsourced that to a co-op of other parents. So that's another part of my experience.
Okay, thanks. Jennifer Brooks.
Okay, so it's an honor always to talk education, especially with thoughtful parents. Kudos to every parent out there, because right now education is not easy, no matter what decisions you're trying to make. I have a lot of really varied experiences that have influenced my thinking. I have 2 teaching degrees. I grew up with a mom who had a child development degree and an elementary ed degree, and then in order to raise our family of 9 kids, she taught preschool for over 37 years in our home. Child development and education and how children learn to read was just part of the daily discussion in our home. I got an elementary degree of my own, and then it was those years in Utah where you just couldn't find a teaching job, couldn't even get. It's starting to be that way now. Couldn't even get an interview, so I went back and got a biology, chemistry, and physics degree, and then I was easily able to get hired as a junior high school teacher, so I have a secondary cert, and but I taught elementary for a couple of years while I was going back. So I have experiences in different schools with different administrations teaching different topics. While I was teaching junior high science, they changed the standards on us, which is a joke. You literally watch them reduce the standards, and then there was no curriculum anywhere to meet the new standards, which is, I'm like, nobody can do their job this way. Anyway, so taught junior high for a few years, and then in order to raise my own family, I've taught preschool. This is year 30 for me in this. I teach in Bountiful, fabulous community, fabulous parents. Every parent's trying to make the right decision for their child. and they're very thoughtful, and I think they always do an amazing job. So I'm very impressed by the work parents are doing. Anyway, so I don't, whatever choice parents make, I watch them struggle with it. Education right now is taking a lot of our money, and unfortunately, it's supposed to fund a free and appropriate public education for children. That's what the language says, education, and instead you look at our schools and that funding is going to so many. If you watch a school board meeting, they rarely discuss education. They discuss purchasing big properties, building state-of-the-art buildings, absurd topics, but never education. Therefore, our scores are marching downward. That is not a solution. That is a huge problem, what is happening. Education right now is claims over evidence, claims with no evidence at all being brought in, marketed, and promoted. It's agendas over what is proven. It's continually lowering standards. I don't know if you're aware how much they've lowered graduation standards in order to say our graduation rate is so high, but it's not, and that's not authentic. And our AP scores have stayed the same for 5 years. Stagnant is not good either, but the AP has also become dramatically easier, but ACT has become easier, and the scores have stagnated. And so all the data they're giving is not even accurate. Our students are being offered less, they're learning less, which means they're being respected less, and they're less intelligent. So through teaching preschool, I had my first daughter was born with some handicaps. I went to an organization that did everything by research, got really heavy into the educational research, and looked around, had 2 other kids at that point, and thought, why are no kids getting this, and why do I have 2 teaching degrees, and I've never really learned this. And then I got a chance to start a charter school based on all the proven findings of educational research, and I was overjoyed. Our charter school thrived, really thrived, and marched to the top of the state really quickly. For about the first 10 years, we had a sound director. Common Core came in, and unfortunately, as an ignorant mom, I thought, oh, my children are set for really good classical, coherent, quality education that was rich in phonics and language and math proficiency. And then the Common Core came in, and the propaganda was so powerful, and the flood of everything on the market that was all incoherent and poor and scraps and fragments and ideologically based instead of content based. You watched it instantly replace anything that was good left, and teachers were pressured so heavily to do that, Common Core, the propaganda, the ideology, and it almost turned overnight. And then the digital testing also was a huge concern, because none of it had any evidence, and it still has no evidence except bad evidence. So then I watched our school march downward, and it broke my heart, and I sat on the board for 4 years, literally having to speak up against the propaganda over and over, and I brought every bit of research and every bit of data, and still other board members were driven by claims, and it was really, and unfortunately we lost our director and were replaced with quite a liberal one who drove all this as well. So to watch that decline when I thought, oh, we are set, and we were not. And so I've had a child that I homeschooled and then dual enrolled because he was an anti-authoritarian child, still is. Smartest kid ever, but he would go find out the truth and evidence and facts himself. So he hated school so bad because it was so disrespectful to him. And even if I chose the best teachers, but ultimately he's quite an athlete too, so we had to find a balance between spending time with people for his real mental strengths. It's a social construct. That's one thing I think that makes homeschool hard. With 10 kids, probably not. But it's a social construct. They have found every kid wants to talk about what they're learning and what they know. So that makes homeschooling difficult if you just have you and your few kids. They want to share that, and that deepens their own knowledge. And then during COVID, our charter school declined so dramatically, and so that I took my youngest, who was going to be going in the 6th grade, and all of his friends we couldn't even meet the absurd, silly schedule the charter school set up of part-time. And so, because I was still able to teach my preschool at that time, so I homeschooled them during 6th grade for just 3 hours a day, and it was golden, and there was nothing else to do. Everything else went away. So it saved them socially because they still had the social construct. They still say that's the best education we ever got. We had history Thursdays. It was just 1 day a week. Like, it was so doable. We did math an hour every day, and to watch them freak out when a new concept came, all of them freaked out. And then a week later, they're like, oh, we get this. It was really
It has
neat.
been 10 minutes. I'd like to hear from someone else.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, lots of experience. Go ahead. Sorry, I'll talk forever. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jennifer.
My name is Courtney Huffman, and it is an honor to be here with you tonight. When Tina called me and asked me to be on this panel, I thought about what homeschool meant to me, and it wasn't really something I had thought extensively about before, and so I wrote my thoughts down, and I'd like to share them with you. I never planned to homeschool my children. If you had asked me years ago if I would one day be responsible for choosing curriculum, teaching history, worrying about math, planning field trips, and wondering whether I was actually qualified to do any of it, I probably would have laughed. But then COVID happened. When schools reopened for a number of reasons, I made the decision not to send my children back. At that time, I didn't know the decision would become one of the most challenging and rewarding decisions of my entire life. Homeschooling has certainly changed the way my children learn. But what I didn't expect was how much it would change all of us. I began to realize that education could be so much bigger than a classroom. We could slow down when something was difficult and move ahead when something came easy. We could spend more time discovering what each child genuinely loved. Learning didn't have to happen only between certain hours or inside 4 walls. History could happen at a historical site. Science could happen outside. Music, art, literature, faith, service, travel, conversations around the dinner table, all of it became part of their education. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing myself simply as their teacher and realized I had something to learn from them too. I learned more about my children, their strengths, their struggles, their interests, and the people they were becoming. I watched their curiosity grow, and mine grew right alongside theirs. Things I once learned simply to pass a test became things we learned because we wanted to understand them. We had time to look things up, research, discuss, and because I was their teacher, everyday moments became inspirational. And because they were inspirational, because I was able to take that time, I kept teaching all day long, and it didn't feel like I was teaching. It didn't feel like I was teaching to myself or to my kids. We'd hear a song on the radio, and I'd say, okay, listen to these lyrics. Tell me what it means. We do that to this day, and it does not feel like that I'm teaching them at all. It feels like we're just all learning together. Has it always been easy? Absolutely not. There have been days when I've questioned myself, days when the lessons didn't seem to work, days when I worried I wasn't doing enough, and probably a few days when all of us would have happily put each of us on a bus and sent us away. But I've been given something I didn't realize was so precious. I've been given time with my children, time to know them, time to teach them, and time to learn beside them. Time to help them discover not only what they can do, but who they are and what matters to them. COVID may have been the reason we started homeschooling, but it isn't the reason we continued. We continued because somewhere in the middle of all that uncertainty, we found something extraordinary. We found a way of learning that brought our family closer together, gave my children room to become themselves, and gave me the privilege of having a front row seat as they did. I thought I was choosing a different education for my children. I didn't realize I was choosing a different life for my whole family. And looking back, I am incredibly grateful that I did, because although this ride has had its bumps and its turns, nothing compares to the journey itself.
Thank you. All right, William, I'm going to let you. So William just got back from work, so he kind of looks like he's been working. And he's also been asking me for a haircut for like the last 3 weeks, so it's my fault, not his. And he also wants to go on a date. So I'm going to make him be here for about the next 20 minutes, and then he's going to go. So, William, why don't you go ahead and talk about your homeschooling experience and the things you liked about it, some of the things you've been involved with. You can even say something you didn't like about it.
Yeah, I've definitely had experiences all throughout my homeschooled education. You know, I never went to public school, but I saw the difference that, you know, were in my friends and me. One time I was at a youth activity for the church, and I remember my older brother's friends. They started talking about high school and the fact that nothing really mattered before high school, because if you had missed anything before high school, you could just catch it all up by your sophomore year. And that never made sense to me, especially because in my home with my mom, she always taught us that education was always a very important thing that you can't slack off. And so it never made sense to me why, you know, all of junior high and elementary school, why they were going there if it didn't matter in the first place. And so that was something that very much influenced the way I thought about public school and what they learned there, regardless with the fact that I haven't been there. But something that I did do at these high schools was sports, and I really enjoyed playing football at Syracuse High and Clearfield High. And, you know, something I liked about being homeschooled was the fact that you had a schedule that you could experiment with, and anything you put on your schedule was because you wanted it or because your parents convinced you to do so. And so that was definitely something I really much enjoyed was playing sports, and, you know, being homeschooled obviously allows it and gives you a great opportunity to do so. The biggest struggle I think I always had with being homeschooled was the fact that, you know, in public school, there's a community of kids that walk around the halls and see each other all day, you know, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that kind of made it harder to meet friends. But the more I got into these extracurricular activities, the more I was able to meet more people and to, you know, have those experiences. And that's something I really enjoyed. And then the last thing I just want to say about homeschooling and public schooling was, you know, I never really met any of my friends or anyone who went to public school who had a very strong care about patriotism and just love for the country. That's definitely not something that I've seen in any of my friends that have gone through public school or it's been a product of public school, but rather some sort of family activity or family belief that has helped them see that. And I've definitely been able to grow and appreciate the founding of this country and you know, gain a love for our country because of the things that my mom's taught and the curriculum that I've learned over and over and over again over my high school and junior high years. And those are definitely the reasons that I have liked high school or homeschool. Yeah.
Okay, Maddie, you go ahead. William,
Thank you.
you can't go yet. Go ahead, Maddie.
I have been homeschooled ever since second grade, and there has been such a difference between, sure, during public school you were able to see your friends every day, but during homeschool you were able to go places and not be stuck in a fluorescent lit room. And I have been gifted by, I can go to classes about the Constitution and learn about my freedom. I have the Declaration of Independence memorized. I have the Gettysburg Address memorized, the New Colossus, and I've been able to go to camps and meet new people who have the same interests that I do. Like William said, that during my public school years, I have never learned a lot about our American history there's never been a full topic, and my main struggle with homeschool has always been math. But my favorite part of being homeschooled was when we would read poetry, because my mom, as she said when we were in the car, that she would play a song and she'd ask us what the lyrics meant. I feel like that's really gifted me in my literature. And so, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now, if anybody has any questions, now's the time that you can come forward. Ben, can you come to the...
Just for the two young people, what is your religious education at home been like?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question since this is being recorded. What has your religious education been like at home?
It's definitely been higher than what I've seen in high school or in public school. Sorry, that's just what I always say. But with the things that I've been taught from my mom and my teachers that my mom set me up with, they've always been people of religious or of that believing in God, and that's allowed me to learn with the perspective that God created the planet, and that everything that happens in the world, it happens because of God, and and that's been a principle that has been a fundamental thing that we always have done. We've always learned to grow up and say prayers before our school, and to start with our foundation, which was just write in your journal, read your scriptures, and say your prayers.
And memorization.
And memorization, which we're memorizing scriptures in the Book of Mormon, or wherever. I've also memorized similar things to what Maddie has here. But religion has definitely been an important thing and a pinnacle point in my education. Yeah.
Same as William. We have been, every day when we would start homeschool, we would start with our prayers and the Pledge of Allegiance. Meanwhile, in public school, I've been in some schools where they haven't even said our Pledge of Allegiance every day. And so I really enjoyed that. Starting off with the Lord is how you should start with every day.
Any more questions for the students? Okay, I'm going to ask William a question, and Maddie, you can be thinking as well. William, why don't you speak to some of the extracurricular opportunities that you've had outside of, we use a lot of different things for our homeschool. Homeschool doesn't necessarily mean we're sitting in our home. Like, we do a lot of pick up and go. So why don't you talk about a few?
Yeah. So aside from sports, I did lots of different extracurricular activities. One of those things was debate. And there's a guy named Sam Martineau who runs something called the IEP program, which essentially is a debate league, but it's been expanded largely using all sorts of subjects. He has science teachers, math teachers. He teaches all sorts of writing, constitution classes. And these are classes that go on throughout the entire state. And it allows, similar to what I talked about earlier about the community that there is in public school. There definitely is a community of homeschoolers, which is nice because it's like-minded people who believe similar things to what I've been taught to believe and what I've learned.
Speak about debate though. What was debate like for you?
Yeah. So
explain.
Okay.
All of it.
So I did something called debate and mock trial. Those things were things that not only me but my brothers and sisters took very seriously and allowed us to go in and read about philosophy and all sorts of different things. And we had tournaments, debate tournaments. Well, it started with classes. We have classes every Monday, but it's different depending on where you're at because there are different teachers. But there's classes every Monday, and then once a month, every student in the debate program, which is around 300 to 500, get together at debate tournaments at different college campuses. The first one's always at BYU, and the last one's at BYU as well. And then there's ones at Utah and UVU and all around the state. But they also do online tournaments, and those are once a month, and they're great opportunities for you to get together and, to do research on subjects that, you wouldn't outside of debate, and then go and debate with other high school or junior high kids, who definitely don't
William,
have a
give
great
them
grasp.
give them a couple of examples of like debate questions or statements that you would study.
Yeah, so there are different topics with inside debate, like there's extemporaneous or presidential debate, or Lincoln Douglas or oratory. Oratory is simply just like 10-minute speeches that you're allowed to prepare, write, and give inside of a room with other competitors and a judge. And then there's extemporaneous is the direction I'm going.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily want you to describe all of the kinds of debate. I want you to tell me what was the topic that you researched.
Okay. Well, with extemporaneous, the point of this event is you get 3 different topic discussions. And you do a ton of research, and then once you get there, you are given 30 minutes to write a 10-minute or 15-minute speech on one of these. And one of the topics that we had was, the issues within the Strait of Hormuz, or AI's, the hand or the role that AI will play in upcoming, in the law world, or different sections or categories like those. And it allows you to get into things that, you definitely wouldn't get into if it weren't for these debate tournaments. And I've learned so much things that I guess I never would have thought I would care about or need to learn, but I'm grateful that I've done the research in all those subjects.
Okay, so lastly, why don't you tell everybody, how did you place in presidential debate at the final debate tournament?
I didn't place.
Wait a minute.
Bruh.
What was the hat for?
I won, but it was a good opportunity. There are lots of different tournaments, and in presidential debate, you pass around a little hat, and then you sign a hat for each person that wins, and they always call you the President of the United States. And so I've had that hat for a little bit.
Okay, Maddie.
Could you repeat the question?
What are some extracurricular things you've been involved with?
Oh, I have been involved with the Constitution Bee, and that's basically where a bunch of kids come from different schools or groups that their homeschool or private schools have formed, and they compete about who knows the Constitution best. And that's held at the Capitol every year. And I have been in certain Constitution class, mainly centered around American history.
Maddie's also participated in Freedom's Light every year. She does presentations there. And she's actually been up to the Capitol during the legislative session. And she went and testified with her sister in front of 14 House members for Trevor Lee's bill for the flag bill. And she did that on spur of the moment. She might not brag about it, but it was a moment that I wanted to brag about. She had 30 seconds, and she got up there in front of the House, and she testified on why the American flag was so important and what it should mean to us, and why it should just be the only flag that's at our schools to create unity. So we've had tremendous opportunities, and I think the biggest thing that's made a difference is having that freedom. I mean, so many people came to this country, our ancestors came for freedom. That feeling never goes away. And so having the freedom with your children to teach them what you want them to know is just a feeling that I can't describe. And so I hope that I'm making sense with it, but having that freedom, there's nothing like it in the world.
We're going to pause for just a minute, and can we play that video now?
Hello, my name is Noah Horlocker. I am a senior studying political science and history at Brigham Young University, moving into law post-graduation. And I'm very excited to share my experiences as a homeschooled student in Tell College. I was homeschooled all throughout my developing years up until my collegiate career, and I feel so blessed to have received the education that I had. There are several reasons that I absolutely loved and appreciated my homeschool education. First, my education was completely tailored to me. I understand the public school systems attempt to do this, but they just can't to the same degree that a school in the home can. I was blessed with an incredible mother who was my mentor growing up. She connected me with many different people and programs that allowed me to develop at my own pace. She understood what I was capable of. She understood what I could do. She understood where I maybe needed improvement, where I needed additional help, resources, and she was able to tailor my curriculum directly to my needs. And that was something that I appreciated so much about my education, is that it truly was tailored to my interests and to my needs. Another thing that I really, really appreciated about my homeschooled background, something that I appreciate today, is the freedom that I had over my own schedule. I wasn't confined to the traditional 7 in the morning to 2, 3 in the afternoon public school structure, which has merit in its own right, but I had control over my schedule entirely, and I could apportion the time that I wanted to things that I wanted to apportion them to. I could get involved in extracurricular activities. Many of those extracurricular activities that I got involved in, especially during my high school years, ended up informing my professional interest in law. I competed in something called mock trial as a high school and junior high student, and I was able to put a lot of time into that. I was able to really develop those skills in speaking, articulation, critical thinking, public speaking, and that really blessed me. And I was only able to do that to the level that I did because of the time that I had. I was able to intern at the Utah State Legislature for several years in high school and even before. I actually led a team of interns during high school at the Utah State Legislature, lobbying for conservative interests. That was something that I could not have done had I been confined to that traditional structure from 7 to 2, 3 in the afternoon. And another thing that I did was dance. Ballroom dance has actually been a big part of my life. It's something that I really enjoy. I love to move, I love to stay active. But I am a competitive dancer. And I only recently discontinued that chapter of my life. But last year, those roots that I had in ballroom dance in junior high and high school, they really came to fruition when I competed with the BYU ballroom dance team at the World Blackpool Championship in Blackpool, England. And we took away the first place trophy at the World Championship, and that was an experience that I will never forget. I was able to invest so much time into those things because I had that command over my schedule. And so homeschooling really was for me. My mother was tremendous. Tina Horlocker, she was very involved in my education, which really helped me get off on the right foot. She taught me principles of hard work, integrity, and those really kind of became the bedrock of my education today in college. Now I attend Brigham Young University. I'm wrapping up my time here. I've had even more opportunities at this wonderful school, opportunities that I will forever be grateful for. And my performance at this university and my opportunities at this university have come directly as a result of those things that I was able to pour time into during my junior high and high school years. Had I not been able to do that, had I not had that flexibility in my schedule, I would not have been able to accomplish some of the things that I have been blessed to accomplish and some of the programs that I've been blessed to participate in during college. And so I am just so grateful for my homeschooling background. I'm so grateful for the mentors that I've received during that time. And those experiences, like I said, lay the bedrock of who I am today as a scholar, as an academic, as somebody who is hoping to dive into the field of law pretty soon here. It really did make all the difference. So.
All right. So I just wanted you to hear from Noah because a lot of people, there's a lot of stigma that people have towards homeschooling. I know my in-laws look down on us for the entirety of their interaction with us. They never saw any value with it whatsoever. I know a lot of other families deal with those kind of things. You know, people just really disapprove of homeschooling, and it's really sad because there is so much opportunity that comes with homeschooling. And Noah, and you know, I don't want this to be about me or my children, but Noah is a Wheatley Scholar recipient. He was a finalist for the Truman, one of the two of the finalists for the Truman Scholarship. Anyway, so it's just, there's a lot of opportunities that come with homeschooling. And I know William wants to go here pretty quick. Does anybody have a question for William? William, do you want to say anything about mock trial? Okay.
Sorry. I also had the is it on? Okay. I also had the opportunity to compete in mock trial like my brother. And every year, my mock trial team was very competitive. Every year we went to nationals after we won state. But it also allowed me to get into that same mentality of wanting to pursue law in my future because I had learned so much about it, and I've prepared so many mock trial cases and taken them to court and gone through that whole procedure with a judge. And that allowed me to really enjoy that, not only with the people that I did it around, but also just the science of mock trial in and of itself. And that's something that I've been able to, do with my siblings, and I've gained relationships that, I definitely will keep and will definitely help affect the direction I go in the future. But yeah.
Okay, thank you, William. I'll let you go. All right, so. All right. So there's a lot I could say about that. I'm going to say one thing about the mock trial program. It's a tremendous, tremendous program. And the team that we've been involved with now for many years has been the top team in the state, both at the junior high and high school level, for quite a few years, so much so that the judges, which are a lot of times lawyers or judges, they're not supposed to know the team that is competing, but they watch for us because a lot of them don't want us to win. A lot of those judges are activist judges, and they don't want the best team to win because they're into all of the, that garbage. Anyway, so I'll just say that. But that's one thing we're fighting against that we shouldn't be fighting against when we're doing mock trial. All right. I want to go ahead and ask some more questions. And again, if anybody has questions, please. I know some of you are here considering homeschooling, so feel free to ask a question. Brian.
So we've just completed our third year of homeschooling, and we've got one kid that we cannot get him to do his language arts no matter what we try. So with your experience in homeschooling, what have you seen success with in getting kids to do a subject that they just do not want to do?
Okay, who wants to take that? Okay, Olivia.
Is it working? Okay. My husband was homeschooled off and on. He did some public schooling and then he did some homeschooling. And one of the things that his family implemented that I find very effective was anytime that they would ask a question, instead of my mother-in-law just answering the question, she'd say, I don't know, you should look that up, write a report, and then tell me about it. And it was because it was something that was interesting to them, they would then turn around, do a little bit of research. The reports when they were younger would be, a paragraph or two. But it had to be written, which encouraged them to then have to think out how they were going to communicate that. And then they could either read their written report or orally give a report that was the same or different to what they wrote that summarized what they had learned. And I think that that's a very helpful technique especially for children who maybe don't have a lot of appreciation for something they're learning. When I was older, I had a really awesome experience. I loved reading, and I was given a lot of freedom with my schedule once those core things were done every day. And for an entire semester, because I was a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, I told my mom that I wanted to study everything that I could about Lord of the Rings. I looked into the author, J.R.R. Tolkien, and I learned about his life. I learned that he was really good friends with C.S. Lewis, and he is the reason C.S. Lewis converted to Christianity. So I like to say my favorite author converted everyone else's favorite author back to God. But I learned a lot about that, and the semester following that, I was still so much into this love of Lord of the Rings and the world creation and everything that I ended up doing a side-by-side, learning that the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings were written as a writing competition between the two authors as to who could write the better Christian novel. And it was through writing Chronicles of Narnia that C.S. Lewis came back from being an atheist to being a devout Christian, and is quoted everywhere as he's one of the most well-known Christian authors. And it was through their writing competition, the two of them trying to see who could write the best Christian novel. I took the Lord of the Rings books and had them side by side with the Bible and wrote in the references from the Bible that I felt correlated with the different parts of the story. And then I lost that book in one of my moves, and I'm so sad about it. But that was an opportunity for me to take something that I was passionate about and then implement it across subjects. So I was, it was a very well-rounded portion of my education. So I think allowing some personal direction and excitement and motivation, but then also I like what my in-laws did as well. So 2 thoughts there.
Okay. Did you have a question? Okay. Does anybody else want to answer that question?
The reality is sometimes you just have to have discipline too. Yeah. It's hard to teach your own kids, as one who has taught my own kids. It's hard to teach your own kids. Some personalities are exceptionally hard. You have to come to, an agreement. I don't care. And luckily, there's lots of wonderful choices of curriculum out there. You want to make sure your curriculum has high standards, that it's coherent, that it's respectful, that it's full language. But if they love history so much more than they love literature, then history is reading, history is vocabulary reading, history is comprehension. I don't enjoy the fantasy, but some kids do. And if that's how they're going to get their reading, it's kind of a bargain sometimes, but sometimes it's like, we have to do 10 minutes of this a day because I value you and I value who you are going to become. So with my one son who was difficult, we had to do that. Now, oh my gosh, he researches everything. And so, you're like, you have to learn to read well. You have to learn to speak well. You have to be proficient at math. These are our goals because you're valuable. And we have to use some discipline sometimes. They say, learning is a reward of itself, and it really is for most children, but also it's extremely hard work. Some things are far more difficult. And so, yeah, you have to, as a parent, have to come to an agreement. You have to address those personalities. And, sometimes you might have to find a great tutor for just that little part or something, because you also have to maintain a relationship with your child, which is, when you're trying to be the authority, and sometimes that's difficult. But the reality is you value them so much that this is so important.
Thank you. Courtney, did you want to say anything to that? I will if you don't. Okay, so there's a big kind of movement called Thomas Jefferson Education in the homeschooling community, and it's a great program. And it was based on, I think, 8 principles, and one of the principles, which was the last principles, was inspire, not require. And that was the whole idea of going back to math, because this educational leader said, you know, inspire your children to learn. And while I totally agree, inspiration should be used in education, discipline, requirement is also a part of it. I think for you to think that your child is just going to pick something up without any effort on your part or a requirement to say, yeah, until you get to go do whatever or do this, you're going to have to do this. So I don't know if that helps you out, Brian, but I'd be happy to help you on that.
We've tried disciplining him, tried all
I don't think, I don't necessarily think discipline is always the answer, but I mean, you don't need to call it discipline, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you need to say, like, we have
Maybe-
to do this for 15 minutes a
yeah,
day.
until you get lunch, you know?
Until
If you
we
want
get good
lunch,
at
just
it,
let's
yeah.
go ahead and finish this. Okay, you had a question?
Sorry, I'm tall.
Oh no, now it's going all the way down. I don't know what I did. There we go.
Talk right.
My question is about resources for parents, either financial, curriculum. This is homeschooling's a whole new world. My kids went to public schools, and so just wanted to hear what resources are available. And I have a second part question too, but I'll.
Okay. So, Peter.
There's an endless list of resources that are available, but especially if you understand that Utah as a state is relatively supportive of homeschooling compared to other states. And as a result, many of the resources that the schools have can be made available to you, including online school and charter schools and the extracurricular activities. Partial enrollment can happen. And so there are resources, and I would suggest all the homeschool groups that you'll hear about, and we could list them until next week, have good resources, but don't forget there are free resources available that you can just get. Even funding, whether it be the Utah Fits All scholarship funding, which who knows how long that will last, for homeschool parents, that will provide you to buy resources that you want to have, to including other resources that are automatically available if you just ask for them. Now, that doesn't tell you what are the resources. I'm just saying, do check with the state. I hate the state, but don't forget them because they'll give you free stuff. And if you check it, you can get the good stuff.
There's also some online groups that, like My Tech High, if you're purchasing like technology for your school, you can apply for reimbursements for some of those things. So that's an actual tangible resource, and there's a few others as well. My favorite right now is just there's a lot of Facebook groups of moms and communities, and I reach out constantly asking questions about, hey, is there a field trip going on? And I have a few different groups that go on different kinds of field trips, and we'll go. I mean, my kids are little, so right now I'm doing a lot of things that are very much appropriate for little kids, but there's constantly moms who are trying to organize places to go and teach. There's a lot of free places that you can go for field trips if you want to do it just with your family or organize your own. There's also, like, I would do Facebook Marketplace and and KSL for potentially like books and curriculum. My favorite math curriculum was Saxon. That's what I grew up with, and I've looked at a lot of others, and that's the one that I appreciated the most. But I know that my mom has since moved on and doesn't do as much Saxon, and she does. Do you do? Are you back at Saxon? But she's done some others as well. So there's those. My favorite reading, if you want to learn history, you want to get kids excited about that, is Childhood of Famous Americans. It's a really good series of books, and you can pretty much pick whoever you're interested in, and there's probably a book about them. And it teaches you about their life in a very comprehensive and easy to digest way. So those are a few suggestions for things you can use.
I'll tell you to write down. One is Rainbow Resources. Just look them up online, and you can go there and get a catalog. It's endless. And Veritas Press. You can go there and they have a curriculum built out for every age. For myself, I never used anyone's whole curriculum. I felt confident enough to build my own child's curriculum. And as far as resources, one of the things that I did, because I did feel like peer learning was important. And I mean, I had a household of children, but I started my own little private school in my home that I've had for 20 years, 12 to 17, where the students come on Tuesdays, and from 10 to 2:30, we teach them history and literature. And this year, Courtney and I are going to team up. But I've been doing this for a lot of years. So that's another example of some resources. I can tell Jen wants to say something.
So this is what I use and I've been trained in, but it's also what our charter school set up, and it was extensively used by homeschoolers before then. If you've heard of the book, The Schools We Need and Why We Need Them, E.D. Hirsch, who's still at it, I think he's 99 now, he was the first to really compile the proven research of all these educational researchers across the nation of what's actually working, and then he wrote that in regular language so people could understand it, and then they ignored it. And so, but he has written these, which is intentionally as a resource of parents. They've been redone, so I like the old copies better because Carnegie bought his company out, I think 10 years ago, and it's become a little more liberal. This is just what your fifth grader needs to know. It's every single content area, and content needs to be your focus. They need the who, what, why, when, where, and how in each subject. So you need to intentionally be teaching those things. You need to have them laid out in a coherent way so they build on each other. And so he has what your fifth grader needs to know. These are designed for parents. They have everything in one book of what they need to learn their fifth grade year. And these are an elevated fifth grade year, not the fifth grade year we're dealing with now. He has a sixth grader. It goes all the way to eighth grade. Saxton Math was originally designed so anyone could teach it because it uses direct instruction. Direct instruction is the most effective form of teaching. You can look it up. Still, it always has been, which means you intentionally lay out what you're going to teach. You have an engagement piece. You teach it. You review it with the child. They practice. You reteach and practice until mastery, basically. And you do that with every little skill, and you build the skills. Those are really evidence-based things. This is called the sequence for every grade. If you go on coreknowledge.org, they have a sequence for every grade, which lists all these novels that they can read in fourth grade and fifth grade and sixth grade. They have free resources still. Their history is still top-notch. They have PowerPoint presentations that have an essential question in each picture. They have reading that is grade appropriate but still challenging and teaches vocabulary and has very formal language. Those are excellent pieces of history to just go over, and along with the history, then you learn art and poetry, and you look at maps. So they're getting a whole picture of history, and it builds from ancient to modern, which is how history's supposed to build. And then it loops around again starting in third grade, and you do it again in greater depth. And so you need really good instruction. You need really good coherent curriculum materials. If you're don't feel super capable, you need really good practice pieces so your child can practice. And you need it to be rich. And you want to incorporate all the big picture for them because they're trying to form a big picture. It's nice to read one little story about George Washington, but where does that go? They need to be able to put the whole thing together. And so these are really wonderful. I think I can't say enough good about them. So anyway, I teach the core knowledge preschool sequence. It has everything, even little social skills they're supposed to learn, all the vocabulary. It's really rich and wonderful. So it's good.
Courtney?
I remember when I decided, well, my husband and I decided, and he's been very supportive. He does, go ahead, you can do this, I'm behind you. And in his defense, he does help quite a bit, especially with math. But I remember feeling so lost. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't even know where to start. We had made this decision not to send our children back to school, and it scared me. And I didn't know that I was capable of it. I have a double major in communications with an emphasis in PR and advertising and in sociology, and I still wasn't sure I was going to be able to do this. So just know that you're not alone. If you are thinking about this, attempting this, if you're in the middle of doing it, I wonder how many homeschool teachers lay their heads on the pillow at night and wonder if they're making a difference. But I can promise you this, after 6 years of doing this, you are making a difference. And there were times that I didn't know which curriculum I was going to use. I'd ask around, and like we've all set up here, we could list it for days. And if you do have questions you'd like to know what I used, you can come up to me after, and I'm happy to share that with you. But what I did that helped me was I just started slow. I decided what was most important, and then I taught my girls with my heart. And there were times I went to my Heavenly Father and I said, what do I do? How do I do this? You know, because it can be so overwhelming. And so I taught with my heart, and that's actually what I speak on now, is history with a heartbeat. I tell my girls this all the time, you can memorize all the dates, all the battles, everything you want in this world, but until it's about a person, until you can put yourself in their shoes, until it's something they're passionate about, they won't remember it. But history with a heartbeat, and that's history in anything. That's just not American history. That's history in language arts. It's history, like Olivia said, it's history in anything that they're passionate about. So that's what I did. I find something my girls wanted to talk about, and we'd write essays. We'd do things like that. But just know that feeling that you feel, that kind of sick to your stomach feeling, like, what am I doing? That's normal, and you'll get through it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing, though. I think it's really important in beginning to embark in educating at home is to not overwhelm yourself. You can get lost in trying to find the best. You know, just be led. You know, you were there. Just be led, and there's so many choices, and your child is not going to learn everything, right? Education is a lifelong pursuit. So it requires patience. If you can instill a love of learning that will continue with them throughout their lives, then you've given more to them than any public school could give to them. So go ahead.
My other question just plays right into that is, you know, my kids went to public school, but I have grandkids now. And so I want to know, like, how can I support you know, them with my children if some of them are considering homeschooling, you know, and what, as a grandparent, can I do to support them? Like, when you're, you know, homeschooling your kids, what kind of support do you wish you had? You mentioned your in-laws were maybe not as supportive, so, you know, what would you have liked to have, you know, by way of support that way?
I can hardly wait to have my turn. I have grandchildren homeschooled. I didn't homeschool my children, and yet there are opportunities to get engaged. When my wife and I returned from a mission to Argentina, I went down to Draper or to Riverton every week for several months to teach Spanish to them. I had just come back from learning Spanish, so I went and I taught them their Spanish lesson. And they're at different levels, each of them, but they could begin to learn a foreign language, begin to learn vocabulary. At least they had the feeling also that Grandpa cared about their education at home, and Grandpa had some experience to share. Those are principles that I think are valuable, and although I can't teach all the classes, I could do something. Now I have a little hobby of portraying historic characters. I put on a costume and act like I'm the old guy. Shoot. My daughter decided, well, that would be a good history lesson. So she invited all the neighbors and a bunch of cousins to come to her house, and one day Henry Knox would show up. A week later, you'd get James Madison would show up. And a week later, you get George Washington. So for 7 or 8 weeks, I got to go and teach history, live history to them. Not every grandparent is going to be like that, but I dare say every grandparent who cares about education has something they can contribute to the homeschooling in a family. So I think I love it when my grandkids invite me to participate, or when my daughter invites me to come participate in their homeschooling.
I love that. I love that, Peter. And I'm gonna just say just a minute. So, yeah, I had completely unsupportive in-laws, and my own parents were not supportive. They were supportive, but they were totally not in any way involved. So, and frankly, I had a husband who was not supportive. I mean, he supported me, but he did not help me at all. And so I had a lot of obstacles to overcome in educating my children at home. But I think I would find ways like my children really didn't have any grandparents. And so I would find someone to be a grandparent to them.
I was just going to say that.
I'd find a veteran down my street who loved to build, and I would just go to him and say, how would you feel about spending an hour with my boys one day a week? And he loved it. On his deathbed, he wanted my boys there. I mean, there's so many cool ways. And I mean, what a great way to involve the community. So,
I was just going to point out a very similar thing. We really didn't have much connection with my dad's side of the family at all, and my mom's side of the family lived an hour away and didn't care to really be invested, never asked. But I had a lot of adopted grandparents, a lot of neighbors in the community who would teach us different things. I remember going to our neighbor's home, and I would help her with dinner like once a week, where I would go into her home and we'd practice making food. I mean, we had responsibilities to make meals at home, but it was just a little different going and doing it for an elderly lady who lived across the street. I still talk to her. I had another grandma who ended up becoming my voice teacher and my piano teacher, and I still keep in touch with her. I had an elderly man who lived in our area who would teach us a little bit about survival, and I still remember those things, and I still am like, okay, what did he I'm like trying so hard to remember all these things. I have a wonderful grandma in my in-laws now who is helping me remember what is the most important for teaching young children reading, because that was what she specialized in. She focused in special education and specifically teaching kids how to read. And none of her kids seemed to care about like memorializing what she did. So I have been sitting down with her and recording sessions where we talk about what it means to teach kids so that I can retain the lessons that she spent her entire life doing, and we can then incorporate that into my kids. So those are just some things that grandparents can absolutely offer wherever you feel like you have something to offer.
And a list of classic books as gifts. My granddaughter, every opportunity we give her, there's some horrible children's books right now that don't even hold the child's attention. The classic, wonderful ones. And like even my 17-year-old went to see the Odyssey, and he said, none of my friends knew this story. He says, we read this story every night in 4th grade. At bedtime we would read for a half hour, but they were all the classic books. We made it through all this long list of, and they just thrived and exposed them to all the best things, because our schools unfortunately are not. They're trying to entertain a lot. And, the best things is also the best story and the best vocabulary and the most engaging and interesting. And so, yeah.
I think making everyday moments, when my husband has an office down in St. George, and we'll go down there, and we go down there for 2-3 weeks at a time. We would never be able to do that if they were in public school. But when we go down there, we'll sit out on the deck and we'll read poetry in the morning, and, we'll make chai tea or hot chocolate and sit outside. And I think the most, the best thing my parents have done is they've taken an interest in the things that I'm teaching. They want to be out there. When they come visit us and we're down there, they want to be out there with us. They have a passion for it, and they show an interest. And just through their example, my children, watching them, it makes them want to be a part of it more. So even if you're not teaching, even if you're and I shouldn't say not teaching, even if you're not teaching out of a book, I think there's some misconception that, especially when you've tried public school and you're going to homeschool, well, it has to be from this time to this time, and it has to be, and I have to do this book and this book and this book, and it has to be all these subjects and all in this row. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. All day, every day, you can be teaching, and it doesn't even feel that way. And if you're a grandparent, just being involved. And, my mom, she wouldn't call in the mornings because she knew that we were homeschooling. She respected that. And, I even started when they were in public school. I started a half hour in the mornings, little flashcards. We'd start with a puzzle, and it was just a half hour worth of lessons. And that didn't feel like homeschool. I didn't even know I was homeschooling before I was homeschooling, And then so when I pulled them out of public school, it just comes easy. And so just taking an interest and being supportive, even verbally, will make a huge difference.
Okay. Got another question coming up.
Thank you to the panel. This has been really insightful and interesting. I have a question for the young scholar with regard to the Constitution. Now, the 6th article of the Constitution describes the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, and also describes the fact that all the judges in any state must adhere to that supreme law, any other laws notwithstanding. I just wonder if you could share some insights with regard to the importance of Article 6.
I believe the Constitution was written with the help of God. And so when in Article 6, they say that if you're trying to pass a law, it's unconstitutional. I feel like it has to be constitutional regarding the supreme law of the land. How exactly would I answer that?
That was perfect. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was totally great. Here we come, another question.
Blaine Ross Cully from Centerville. Actually, I have a comment, and that comment is I really appreciate what I have heard today. I'm glad that each of you have had the time to teach your kids. But most of the families that I know of have 2 parents working to make the money, make ends meet because of the economy of today. When I was going to elementary school, postal stamps were 5 cents a piece, and now they're what, 84 cents a piece? Can we afford that? Just on the postage stamps. So it takes a lot to do. Now, the one thing that I wanted to comment, I only know 1 or 2 people in this room, but we are a community. And if we go completely 100% to homeschooling, which is probably the best education that you can get, we give up the community. And I think that it's absolutely imperative that we get along in community. We talked about church a little bit. The 2 most important things about church are doctrine and socialization. Because if we lose the socialization, we lose members of the church. And the same thing is true with education. When through 6th grade, we had prayer every morning. We said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. And so I am absolutely 100% in favor of homeschooling and doing that. I am absolutely in favor of homeschooling, teaching their kids, and even having discipline problems and having those fixed. But I just want you to know that in this community that's here, a very small community, and the larger community that we live in is premier the most important thing. And I hope that we, as public education supporters and private personal education supporters, can make that fit perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to leave the socialization to you guys and any other thought, but I'm just going to address the financial, okay? Okay, so I believe that what God inspires you to do, He makes available to you. And I have lived that in my life because I have homeschooled through not, I mean, obviously I had my first, so, but I've homeschooled through having babies, 9 of them all together after my first. And I've homeschooled through lost jobs. Multiple times I've homeschooled through a divorce. I am still homeschooling on my own while working in my home. So overcoming obstacles is a part of life. And if there's anything that education at home teaches you, it is to trust in God. And as you are doing what you feel inspired to do, God provides the way to do it. Now I'm going to let Peter start, and you go for it. But let's kind of limit it to about 3 minutes.
We'll keep it short. Yeah, I agree. Socialization is a real problem for the public schools. Homeschoolers have a great way, a good system of becoming socialized. They draw community together in ways that no public school can do. And besides, when the public schools socialize your children, really? That's the kind of socialization you want your children to be in? They'll teach them everything you don't want them to know. Yeah, they'll teach you a few good scholarly things too along the way, while they corrupt your children. So socialization is not a problem in the homeschool community. They draw together and help one another in ways that no public school, the teachers in public school would dream of having parental involvement like the homeschoolers have among themselves. So socialization, yeah, I pity the public schools trying to socialize children. And there's just no better way to get socialization of children done than the homeschool way, which, speaking of community, draws those parents together. Imagine if every neighborhood had so much homeschool going on that they were talking to each other. There's some community for you. We don't have to learn how to get along with the public school community. We need to learn how to get along with the community, and homeschooling does that.
You know, when I was growing up, I would be told often that because I was a homeschooler, that meant I should be awkward. I shouldn't know how to communicate with people. I didn't have any friends, and how dare I say that I knew people. I knew more people than other kids my age who I knew through church and those who lived in my neighborhood that were going to school. I had friends 2 to 100 at the age of 8. I knew how to talk to adults and to children. I had friends across the state. I knew people out of the state at the age of 12. At the age of 12, because I was homeschooled, I was able to start participating in an internship program at the Capitol every year during the legislative session. That is really difficult for people in public school to do because they have to get a waiver to sign their kids out of class for a day. You have to go every week for 7 weeks, and you have to commit a whole day to participate in that program. And I got to do it multiple days every single week because that was something that I did. So I was learning about the process of making laws. I learned about so many legal things that I still use today. I'm still very publicly active, and it's from things that I learned when I was 12 and older. And like I said, I have friends all over the place. I have tutored in elementary schools, and that is when I knew for sure I would never put my children in a public school. And that was before COVID. That was before it became cool to recognize the indoctrination camps that public schools have become. And that does not mean that there are not good teachers who are putting in effort there. That does not mean that we should vilify people who are using the public school system, but it means that we as a community, like Peter said, need to be building a community and making it available. My family, my husband and I decided that homeschool was imperative for our family. So I do not work outside of the home. My primary job is to be a wife and a mother and to teach my children. And we have financial difficulties because of that, but we were willing to make that sacrifice because of how important it is. And my children do not miss out on socialization even now.
Okay, so let's try to keep it to 3 minutes. We have one more question here, and then we'll call it a night. Can't hear you.
I want to speak truthfully to where the language of division is coming from. The language of division is not coming from all these wonderful families in our community who are trying to help and support each other. The powerful language of division is heavily being pushed from the teachers union. Anytime you say you do something different, they're like, you're not supporting public schools. No, I am supporting parents making wonderful decisions for their children, neighbors making wonderful decisions for their children who they know a lot more about than I do. I will never, ever discourage a parent from making good choice for their child, whether they choose public school, dual enrollment, homeschool. I say, good for you. You're being a great parent. We cannot continue to accept the language that is pushed to us, that because we're not supportive, and that's not a good word either, because our financial investment in public schools is massive, and I wish we could execute Thomas Jefferson's egalitarian idea that every single class of student could have the same level of knowledge. But if you look at the data coming out of our public schools right now, it's going the other way. The gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the same time, our very top students are being pulled down while we have increased funding. We have doubled funding in the last 10 years. So we cannot, as taxpayers and community members and families, accept the incorrect language that's been handed to us, that because we want to make choices for high standards for our kids and our tax dollars, that we're not supportive. I've only found people that are wonderfully supportive, but the angry language that is pushed and the shame that is kind of pushed because you're making a choice for your own child, I am totally against that, and that is divisive, and it is wrong, and it is not true.
Thank you.
There's wonderful people doing wonderful things all over the place and trying to build, and we have to be the builders. So we have to look at solutions that are working. Is our money working, or is our money being dumped into a hole that's failing? If it's failing, we have to say that's not a solution.
Yeah, thank you. Courtney?
Hey, I'll be brief. This was a concern of mine, a very big one. There is a stigma associated with homeschooled children. And when I was growing up, if you were homeschooled, you were weird. That's what we were taught. And I mean, that's what we thought in public school from the children that were homeschooled. But I've had a very different experience with that. I have taken a different approach with my girls. We actually role play sometimes, and I'd say, okay, introduce yourself to me. Shake my hand. Where are you looking? We practice this. Not a lot. It doesn't take that much. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't take that long to instill these values and these principles in your children. Even the principle of making eye contact and shaking someone's hand firmly, smiling, introducing yourself, and role-playing like that. But the biggest difference I've found is the difference that I see. I've had the opportunity to be at events where I've been around homeschooled children and public school children. And again, like Olivia says, we're not trying to vilify anyone, but I can tell you at the end of that event, which kids have been homeschooled just by the way they act. Homeschooled kids can talk to policemen, they can talk to firemen, they can talk to the grandma next door, they can talk to anybody. We were at a family reunion last week. I promise I'm going to be brief. But I spoke with someone, a family member, never met her, and she said, Madeline came up, she introduced herself to her, she excused herself, introduced herself to this woman, and as she walked away after she'd spoken with her, this woman looked at me and she goes, I can't believe that. She goes, these kids, she said they can carry on a full conversation. They're polite. They are able to answer questions that you ask them. They ask me questions. She goes, there was another one here that I spoke with. And she goes, oh, there he is. And incidentally, it was my nephew, Grayson. And she goes, I just don't understand it. And I said, well, let me explain it to you. I said, they're homeschooled. Both those kids are homeschooled. I said, my other daughter's around here somewhere. She's also homeschooled. I said, that's the difference that you'll see. I said, and that's not to say that public school kids don't have the ability to do the same things as, as far as socially. But it usually comes from parents that are heavily involved in that. They don't learn it from the public school. I mean, how can they? They're sitting at a desk, the teacher's up there talking. They don't get those opportunities. So that's just been my experience with it.
Okay, go ahead. You have a question.
I don't know, it's a question. I'm gonna follow up on his topic there, and maybe some of you have. Is that working? It's green now. Okay, it's green now. So when my son was in, we pulled my son out of first grade and moved into a charter school in second grade. And the next year, I was in another home talking with another family in my area, and the mother had just had a daughter who had gone into kindergarten in my same neighborhood local school. It was a Title I area, not a great part of West Valley City, if you know the geography down there. And she said, it's amazing how this kindergarten class, they can't even find 4 teachers or four parents to show up and have a mock tea party with the classroom, because of the same reasons you illustrated, that they're all busy, they're all doing things, they're all out of it. And I realized at that moment that one of the things I had done to my local boundary school when I pulled my student and put him in a charter school is I took me away from the PTA. I took my wife away from that school. In that school, they had reached the point where the principal had appointed the PTA president because they couldn't get the involvement there. So I'm really concerned about the brain drain that's happening to those left behind in the public system. And it really concerns me, because I see 4, 5 wonderful adults here. And you've been on the PTA in the last 10 years? Okay, good for you.
And the PTA just dramatically moved their value system far away from anything I stand for.
Yeah.
So it's my last year, and I'm like, I can't. If they're going to move so far away from, then I don't know how we're going to have people left.
I don't want to talk about the PTA as an organization. I want to talk about the quality adults are gone.
I agree with that. I've seen that very similarly. Like I said, I've worked as a substitute teacher at an elementary school and as a tutor in their after-school program, and we saw that all over the place, where there were just parents that didn't want to be involved, and the parents that did want to be involved typically didn't have their children in the after-school program because they were able to be around a little bit more. And those families that have working parents, it's a lot harder for them to be involved unless they take time off. It's not impossible, but it is harder. I know that I wanted to be more involved at my local school, and I volunteered on numerous occasions, and eventually I was told, because I did not grow up as part of the program, I wasn't a public school student, so I wasn't a product of the system. I had no place in there. When I started wanting to attend school board meetings, I was told that because I didn't have public school experience, I should not be giving my feedback. Why on earth would I want to put my children in a school that's not going to allow for me to have influence over where they would be educated or how? So I think that's one of the big problems. I totally understand what you're saying and agree with that, but I think if I'm not allowed to have a say and have influence, then I can't change it to be a place I feel safe having my children.
Is mine? Oh, the truth really is the public school system is a broken system. And all of the people that you're looking up here, and a lot of other people in here have spent their lives trying to fix it. But it's only gotten further away from us. And so it's just come to the point where we have to create a new system. Anyway, I'm going to let you answer your question.
Okay, I just have 2 questions. I'm just starting out, have lots of little kids at home. So my first one is just maybe time management. Sounds like you may have become a professional at that. I mean, at work I have to do it all the time, but it's different when it's your kids, and just like that balance between having babies, and I'm like, I am at a loss some days. I'm like, how is he going to learn his alphabet by the end of, anyway, so just time management, and also, where's like a good place to start to find kids their age? You know, I think it's important to find, like, I want him to find other boys to play with that are his age, that are homeschooled with my values. So where would be like a good place to start for that?
Caitlin, you and I are in a very similar stage, but I do have girls and not boys. Well, I finally do have a boy, but he's 6 months, so not quite hopeful yet. At least for me, with the time management side of it, for Molly and Anna, for the last year and a half, in the mornings when I'm changing diapers, we sing the alphabet song. I will sign it to them. So Molly and Anna both know how to sign their names. Molly knows M. She practices M. She tries really hard with her teeny little hands to do M. And sometimes she'll do N or T, and then I have to say, oh, no, that's a T or that's an N. But she recognizes them, and then I do have them printed, and we'll practice them on her board too. So she at least knows, Molly at least knows her letters. Anna knows hers too because she only had to learn 2 of them, A and N. It was really easy. But we have also, Anna, who is 2.5, has 3 articles of faith memorized because we just practice recitation. It's me, I'm changing diapers, and I'll be like, we believe, and I start saying something, and we've now got 3 different scriptures memorized, a 2.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, or however old Molly is now. And so I do a lot of that just in the morning when we're in one room, and sometimes I'm sitting there bouncing law at the end, or I've laid him down for a nap, and we keep ourselves really in one small space because it makes it a little easier to control them in one room. And I do a lot of it while we're changing diapers. And then I have them in their chairs, and we'll practice, colors and some shapes. And I do it, try and do it when they're a captive audience a little bit, because they're little enough that I can do that. When they get a little bit older, I'm definitely going to need to figure something else out. But right now, they're young enough that I have a captive audience, and so I just do the recitations, the singing, the different things in those moments.
Okay, I'm just going to say one thing about Caitlin, about your question. And time management is hard, especially when you have little children and you're bringing new ones in, and there's all different ages. It's a challenge. There's no 2 ways about it. But the more organized you are, the more successful you will be. That's just all there is to it. Read the book, Cheaper by the Dozen. It's all about systems. The father in that book, he's all about systems. You build systems, and then you follow those systems. They have to work with you, but systems help you be successful, and you have to be disciplined. And frankly, if I didn't take care of me first, I would not have been a very good mother or a very good homeschool mom. And so I always made sure I was doing my own foundation, which is what my son referenced, and exercising, just taking care of me first before I could and I would do it in the morning, early in the morning. And I can tell you my schedule later on. I don't mean to go on about that, but I was always writing things, always making plans, having a commonplace book where I was making goals, I was building time, time plans, all those kind of things constantly. That's very helpful. Okay, I'm going to give everybody, Jen, you have something you want to say here. So okay. Yeah, I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to sum it all up, and then I'll finish, and then we can network a little bit. So Peter, go.
Ready for me now? Okay.
What do you want to sum it up with?
Yeah, I'll sum it up with this. If you're homeschooling, especially if you're just getting started, you can't do it wrong. You can't do it worse than the public school. If you don't get very much accomplished, you're accomplishing more than the public school. So don't worry about that. They're not going to fall behind if you don't get it right some of the time, if you're overwhelmed some of the time. You have so much more to give in homeschooling than they would there. And besides, what they get from you is going to be pure and good and lifting upward constantly, rather than having to go up and down and wonder what's right and who's right and who should I believe. All of that is gone. So don't worry if you can't get it all right. And second of all, please stop with the stigma against public school. We don't need to stigmatize the public school. Of course, they can't stigmatize us. We're right. We know how it's done, and we make it better. So any stigma they think they have against us, just ignore that, and we will try not to stigmatize them.
If you've ever seen or read Little House on the Prairie, that is homeschooling. You've got your fun education that happens in the home where the kids, when they're little, are following you around everywhere. They're watching you chop the tree, and then they learn how to chop the tree. They watch you build the house, and then they start lifting the logs too. And they learn how to light the fire, and they learn how to bake the bread, and they learn how to make the soup. And then when they get a little bit older, they go to the church/building house, the church/school, and they meet with kids from ages younger than first grade all the way to 12th grade, and they're all learning together. And they've got one teacher who goes to individual kids and says, okay, we're all reading out of the primer. Let's make sure you know what you're doing. And you look at your different things. That is homeschool. As you've got children who are at all different ages and ranges, you are going around and you are giving personalized, individualized, one-on-one educational effort towards each of your kids. And when you're in a community that allows for that, then you might go to my mom's class that she's got going on, where she's going to be able to teach some history to kids at a certain age range. And I don't have kids that can participate in that yet, but they sure want to. Molly wanted to sit in on all those classes last year. But you are creating that community where then you can lean on the other parents also. I am not an expert on homeschooling, but if there is any parent who has kids under the age of 8 and you want some advice and help, I am more than willing to help. I've got friends who are trying to create a coalition, who are trying to create a co-op, who are trying to get together to do field trips and different things of that nature. The most important thing about homeschooling, 1, teach your children principles. 2, homeschooling allows for you to teach your children how to think, where public school teaches them what to think. That is the most important.
Yeah, I support parents no matter what the choice is. And I'm very tired, and I notice the damage of the divisive language on all fronts. And it saddens me because none of it is solving the problem. So we as individuals in a community can solve the problem, and we're always the ones that do, and parents are doing such a good job solving the problem that they're seeing that are occurring for their children. So we just have to support them no matter what that choice is, because parents are trying honestly to make the best choice. There are still excellent teachers in the public school. There are excellent alternatives. I really am concerned that we are going to 100% have to have alternatives. It is going to be necessary if we're going to actually still remain and have liberty and freedom and critical thinkers. I am seeing it go that way so rapidly, it breaks my heart. And our money's going the other way. It's paying for the false ideologies. And so we have to speak to truth, that we just want a really good education for every single child, no matter what their background, their socioeconomic status, their family status. And we have to support a good education. And we cannot be part of the people that accept the divisive language or disagree with them. We can say, well, here's your data, and the data's not looking good, but we can say we can do better because we can, and places and people are. And we have older people in our communities, and we have wonderful people with wonderful knowledge and skills that might have to say, oh, I could probably help with this instead of put people down for this. Parents that are working 2 jobs, they have such a hard decision every day, and I cheer them on. And so I'd let, part of the solution, part of the building, part of the support, part of holding our children in high regard and high respect, and honoring them by what is best and beautiful and truthful and high level, and really trying to educate no matter where you are, because it does kind of take a community, but parents are the most important people in education, which means grandparents are probably the second most important people, and then teachers may become third if they're really worth their salt. So we can all be part of that solution, and we have to speak to that solution.
I think the best advice I can give, and it'd be advice I'd give to myself, even to this day, you don't have to have it all figured out right now. You don't put that pressure on yourself. It'll be too easy to give up on it. If you put that so much pressure on yourself that every day you're worried about this and this and this subject and this, and oh, I didn't get this done, and oh, I didn't get this done. Since I've been homeschooling, I've actually started teaching at a private school. It's a hybrid school for homeschoolers like my daughters. And there were times I was teaching these kids and I thought to myself, they're not even listening to me. I'm up here and they're not even listening to me. And they were. Later in the day, later in the week, they'd even, when we go through the songs, when we go through the poetry, I get texts from parents saying, what's the name of that song? They have to know it again. They want to know, and those were the rewards that I would get from it. But the biggest advice, the best advice I can give you is stop trying to figure it out all right now. Take it in baby steps. Take it in stride. Find your language arts curriculum, and then move on to math. Don't think that you have to have it all figured out right now. And it will come, I promise you. It will come, and you will learn as much as those babies are learning. And they're learning from you every step of the way.
I just want to say one thing. Being homeschooled has been such a gift. I cannot say how grateful I am to be able to spend such time with my mother. And I know she didn't set me up to say that either. But the memories I have made, and with my sister, making elephant toothpaste in our backyard. Again, sipping chai tea on our balcony while reading Edgar Guest. It has been amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I know that your kids will appreciate it too if you decide to homeschool. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to tell you, about 25 years ago, I went to the local elementary school to register my daughter for school. And when I went to open that door, it was locked. And I was like, oh, I was feeling such trepidation. I didn't understand it because I went to public school. I was on drill team. My husband was student body vice president. I had no idea what I was feeling, what I was going to do. But when that door was locked, it was like a thunderbolt from God saying, this is not where your children are going to be. And I was like, really? Well, what are they going to do? I mean, I had no idea. I didn't know anything except for I did know one homeschooling family, and they were the most awkward family I knew. And when I told my mother what I decided, that was the same family she thought about. Anyway, but what I did do was I started to read to my family. I started to read to my children. And I would read to my children every day of our homeschool for about an hour. They could do quiet little things. And that was the most joyous time of our day, was me reading to my children. We read all of the Lord of the Rings series in preparation for the movies, and I mean, we've read everything you can possibly imagine. Summer of the Monkeys is the best. Write that one down. Little Britches. There's so many wonderful stories to read to your children. And my homeschooling my children, I mean, yeah, I would go hide in the bathroom sometime and cry and just feel like I could tear my hair out, and I didn't know how I was going to solve one problem or the other, but it was always solved. And I don't even remember the problems anymore. Now I just remember it was always solved. And I will never, ever regret the decision to educate my children at home. And believe me, it was an inspired decision. I had no intention of that whatsoever. But I will never regret doing it. It's been the greatest accomplishment, the greatest joy, the greatest opportunity of my life. And my children now, we all have a dream. And our dream is to buy a big parcel of land, and all of us own property all around that land, and in the very center have a schoolhouse. And every day they send their children to the schoolhouse along, we dream, please. That's our dream. I hope it comes to pass. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. Feel free to come up and ask questions. We do need to be out of here pretty quick because we've gone on pretty long and these wonderful people here need to leave. So we do need to kind of work our way out. So let's ask questions as we work our way out. And if any of you are interested in the private school that Courtney and I will be teaching this year, come up and get a flyer about it. So, and don't forget the honey order too if anybody wanted those papers. Thank you everybody for coming.
On the flip side, if you don't get our emails, feel free to come sign up for them. Sure. We also have flyers to take to your friends.
You're just so pretty. You're just, and just so classy. I mean.